Well, while the last few people are getting into the webinar room, I'll get started with just some introductions and housekeeping info. So my name is Neil Liebenguth. I am one of the assistant directors of financial aid here at the University of St. Thomas, and I am joined by my colleague Tom Asp, who is a senior admission counselor here at St. Thomas. And we're going to talk today about decoding your financial aid award. But before we get into that, I wanted to just give a little bit of info about the webinar in general. As an attendee, you are automatically muted on entry, and this is just to keep the audio clean for everyone listening in. I do encourage you to add your questions to the Q&A feature that we have available for you, and then we will answer those questions at the end of the presentation. One of our team members will be monitoring the Q&A. If you have any potential quick questions that he might be able to answer for you, but otherwise we'll do our best to address as many questions as possible with the time allowed. We will be recording this webinar, so you can come back and watch it later. If there's info that you want to recap, it will be posted to our website in the coming days. Just due to the nature of what this webinar covers, we won't be addressing any very personal, specific financial aid questions to your situation. We'll do our best to answer as many general questions that are going to affect many people that are interested. But as far as very specific to your financial aid award, we won't be answering that, but we definitely encourage you to reach out to your financial aid counselor after today to start working on those questions and making sure you get all the info that you need. So with that, I think we'll just launch right in and talk about decoding your financial aid award. So what we plan to talk about today, one second here, is just a quick recap of what financial aid is in general, kind of define some different terms for you. We're going to go over how to both find your award and then read the award. We're going to talk about what's left to pay after financial aid and how you can easily view that information. And then we're going to go over some of the next steps in the coming months here that you're going to want to know. As far as financial aid, we'll start at the very, very basic, what financial aid is. Financial aid is money that you receive to help pay for your college costs. It's as simple as that. So financial aid, though, is normally broken into two different camps, gift aid and self-help. Gift aid is money that's given to you and that you aren't required to pay back later and that you don't have to work for during school to earn. So it's a gift. It's money that's given to you. This normally comes in one of two different forms, a scholarship or a grant. These are effectively the same thing, but at St. Thomas, when we use the term scholarship, we're going to generally mean that that's going to be merit-based. So oftentimes that's going to be based off of previous academics, whether that's through high school, that might be based off of a scholarship competition maybe coming up, or maybe some of you just sat in on the science, math, and engineering scholarship competition. So scholarships are going to be something that's going to be merit-based, something in your background. Grants, on the other hand, when we use the term grants, that is going to be need-based. So primarily based off of the FAFSA, the Free Application for Federal Student Aid. So when we use that term, again, it's going to be need-based, based off of financial background of the family. So again, gift aid, money given to you. Self-help, on the other hand, is money that you receive that does have some extra strings attached, to use that phrase. So this normally comes in one of two forms: work study. Another term for this would be campus employment. So work study are going to be funds that you can earn by working a job on campus. And then loans, on the other hand, is money that you receive now, that you borrow now, that will go towards paying your college costs, that you will then repay in the future after college with earnings that you receive from employment or other sources. So loans do need to be repaid later in life, but generally not while you're still in school. And then work study are going to be funds that you're going to earn by working a job to help pay your college costs or other costs that you have. So I just want to do a quick recap of that because we're gonna, when we go into the financial aid award itself, I'll be going over where these things are through in a typical financial aid award. So why don't we start right with how to find your award. So I'm gonna switch over here to our website. So, so this might be a familiar page for all of you. So the quickest way to find your award would be to go into the email that you received recently. If you've received your financial aid notification from St. Thomas, we emailed that directly to students and carbon copied parents on that. So there's a direct link to our Murphy Online system to be able to view your financial aid award. If you misplaced that or for whatever reason don't have that available, the other thing that you can do is go to the website and add /awarded. Again, this is all being recorded, so you can come back and watch this later if you want a reminder of the steps. But if you add /awarded, this will bring up our financial aid checklist. This is a really helpful tool in general because it lets you see a lot of additional information on next steps. So such as submitting your deposits, some guides on some things that we're going to talk about during this presentation. It's got a link to our notification of award guide. This goes into a lot of good detail on financial aid information. So this is a really good thing to check out later. There's a direct link to this within that email that I mentioned as well. So lots of good information in this checklist here. I definitely encourage you on your own time to go through this checklist and read it over. But at the very least, there's some more info here on how to view the financial aid award on Murphy Online. So the first thing that students need to do before you can log into Murphy Online is, if you haven't already, you need to claim your St. Thomas account. Now, I'm not going to be able to walk you through this part of the process just because I've already claimed my account and I can't do it twice. But there's a nice handy link here for claiming your account. If you are running into trouble with this part of the process in the account claim parts, I definitely encourage you to reach out to our tech desk. This is their number right here. You can also email them at techdesk@stthomas.edu. But reach out to our tech desk if you're having trouble claiming your accounts. In the email that you received notifying you that the financial aid award was available, it should let you know if your account is claimed or not. If it says you need to claim your account, that means that you haven't yet done that, and it'll have a link to allow you to claim your account. But claiming your account is very important because that gives you the username and password to be able to log into Murphy Online. Again, direct link to Murphy Online is in that email that I've mentioned, but you can also click this link right here. I'm actually already logged into Murphy Online, so I'm not going to go through it again. But there's also some nice handy steps here too with how to get to it. But it's as easy as clicking on the link here, using that username and password that you just made, and then clicking on the financial aid section. So this is the financial aid section of Murphy Online. The first page that you open up is the home page. One thing you'll notice right away is the student requirements section. So you might have additional information here, you might not. Most of you likely, again, if you've received your financial aid award, will see that we have your FAFSA on file. If you see any yellow outstanding requirements, don't worry too much about that yet. We are going to be reaching out to you about how to satisfy those requirements, what additional documents we might need from you, or additional process that you might have to go through. But again, don't worry too much about those yet. If you've received an award or an estimated award, you're still going to be able to view that, and then we're going to be reaching out to you very shortly in how to complete those requirements. In most cases, outstanding requirements have little to no effect on your financial aid award. Sometimes, if there's some updates that need to be made to your FAFSA, it can change some of the need-based aid, but in most cases, your financial aid award should stay the same. But you're on the financial aid homepage here. In order to view your financial aid award, it's right next door to the home button. It's award offer. So you click here. And then that will bring up a page that looks like this. Now, I have a lot of blue notes at the top here. You'll likely only have a couple. This is for this account here, this is kind of our testing ground. So we have some additional info here. So, but for example, if you have an estimated award, because we still have some documents we need to collect from you, you'll see this note up here just reminding you that your award is estimated. If you don't see this here, that means that your award is more finalized and no additional requirements outstanding for that. So again, read through the beginning notes here. It's definitely good, important information. And it's going to be specific to you. So there can be different information for you depending on your financial aid award. In general, it'll let you know about checking out the resources tab. We won't go over that today, but there's some good terms and conditions here to read through on your own time. And some quick instructions on how to navigate this page. But that's also what I'm here for today, is to help you read through and understand what these sections mean. So the first big section that we get to are the scholarships and grants to pay for college. So in this section, this is where we list that gift aid that we talked about earlier. So there might be a number of things here for you. There might just be one thing here for you. It's going to depend on your specific financial aid. So in most cases, you'll see a St. Thomas scholarship here listed. You might also see additional grants. Remember, grants are going to be need-based financial aid. That's determined by the FAFSA. So this student here has a founder's grant. This is an institutional St. Thomas-based grant. You might also see a Minnesota State grant here if you qualified for it based off of FAFSA results. You could see the federal Pell Grant potentially here. There's other grants that you might see listed here. So, but again, in general, grants are going to be, or grants are gift aid, need-based gift aid that's going to help you pay your college costs. So you'll see the various scholarships and grants listed here. You'll see that it's split between the 2 semesters. So this just means that half comes for fall semester and half comes for spring. And then you'll see a total amount listed over the side here. The other thing that you'll probably notice is that it says accepted already. So there's no additional steps that you need to do for scholarships and grants to accept them. If you decide to enroll at St. Thomas and you submit your deposit, your confirmation deposits that Tom will talk about a little bit more later in the presentation, that's all you need to do to receive your St. Thomas scholarship and various grants that you receive. So, so there's no additional accepting that you need to do for those. So we assume that if you're coming to St. Thomas, that you want these scholarships and grants. So the other thing that you might notice is a dash here. So this doesn't mean that you have negative scholarship money. The negative here is actually positive. This means that this is the amount that you're going to have to help pay towards your total college costs. We're going to go over that in a little bit more detail in a little bit. But again, a negative here is a positive. So this is just the total amount of scholarships and grants that you might have listed here. So again, scholarships and grants is the first thing that you want to look at. This is the funds that are going to come directly off your costs and help lower your net cost to attend St. Thomas. If you receive any additional scholarships in the future, they'll be added to this section. So you'll see them come up, maybe not immediately after you've been notified about your scholarship, but quickly soon after. But again, this is the first section that we want to look at. And then scrolling down the award here, we have options to pay net costs. So this is going to be the self-help options that we talked about earlier. So you can see the first one listed here is work, and then there's also a section for loans. So for the work section, you can see the federal work study program here. If you don't see this on your financial aid award, it's possible that or it's likely that you did not qualify for federal or state work study funds as part of the FAFSA. That's okay. That doesn't mean that you can't work on campus. It just limits your job selection by a little bit. Most of the jobs that we have available on campus are open for everybody. There's not a pay rate difference between work study or non-work study jobs. But work study funds are one of the types of financial aid that you can qualify for through the FAFSA. So again, if you don't see this listed here for you, it doesn't mean that you did anything wrong. It just means that you didn't qualify for it based off of the work study funds, your FAFSA results, but there still are options for you. Work study is a little unique compared to the other types of financial aid for a few different reasons. One, it's up to you if you want to work on campus or not. So you don't need to work on campus if you've been awarded work study funds. All that would happen if you choose not to, if you were to decline this, for example, would be you just wouldn't have these funds available for you, and you would pay for the your costs in another way. We'll talk about ways to pay remaining costs a little bit later. Another way that work study is different is that it's paid if you do decide to work on campus and are hired. You earn these funds every 2 weeks as you work, as opposed to the beginning of each semester, like the other types of financial aid that you receive. So you're going to receive this again every 2 weeks as you work, and depending on how many hours you're working per week. And then finally, with work study, another important thing to point out is this is the one type of financial aid that it's up to you how you want to receive these funds. So you can choose to have them paid directly towards your student account and start paying down your student bill, or you can have them paid directly to your own bank account and use those for other personal expenses that you might have as well. So just like any other job that you might have off campus. So work study is the one way you can do that. All of your other financial aid is going to pay directly to your student account automatically, but work study, you get an option. You can even do a split as well. You can do 50-50, half to my bank account, half to my student account. So that's how work study is a little bit different. I normally suggest to accept the work study funds if you're offered it. If you decide later to not work, no big deal. There's no negative repercussions if you've accepted your work study funds and don't use it. If you're eligible for it next year, you'll still be offered it next year, even if you decided not to work your first year. There's no negative to accepting the funds. What it does do is just makes fewer steps later. If you do decide to work on campus, you don't have to then go back later, log in, and accept it. So I normally accept that or encourage students to accept it, but again, it's up to you. There's not a deadline on accepting the work study funds, so you do have time to do that. But again, it's an easy one to just get out of the way, and you can accept it by just clicking accept here, and then later on clicking submit. So the next section, loans here. So in this student's particular case, you can see they were offered a federal direct unsubsidized loan for $5,500 for the year. I will go into the difference later of unsubsidized versus subsidized loans, but the other option that you might see here is the subsidized loan. Regardless of the breakdown between the two, the total that a freshman dependent student can receive is $5,500 for the year. So if you do see an unsubsidized loan, or sorry, if you see an unsubsidized loan and the subsidized loan listed here, the total will still add up to $5,500 for a freshman student. Sophomore students get offered $6,500, and then junior year and senior year students are offered $7,500. So that's just something that's built into the federal rules on it. It's not something that you can choose to increase. You can, on the other hand, choose to decrease it. So if, for example, if you only wanted to borrow $2,000, you can click on modify here, and you could change it to $2,000 and click OK, and that'll let us know that you want to borrow a smaller amount of the loan. So federal loans pay at the beginning of each semester as well, so it's split in half. And you do need to accept or decline these loans before they will pay to your account. You don't have to make this decision right away. You can look over funding, make this decision later. I normally encourage students to make this decision by the beginning of August, because there is some additional paperwork that you need to complete before the loans will actually pay to your account. But again, you do need to manually accept or decline these. So say you decide to accept your federal loan, you'll click accept here. If you have two different loans, the subsidized and unsubsidized, you'll click accept for both or accept for one and decline for another, whatever you choose to do. And then you'll click submit, and that'll notify our office that you've accepted these loans, and then we'll start the next parts of the process as far as sending you that information about completing that online paperwork for the Department of Education. So that's the two main sections. Again, the gift aid section, scholarships and grants, money given to you, you don't have to repay or work for, and then the self-help section, options to pay net costs, which is going to be work study funds, and or federal loan options. Another thing you can do while you're on this page is if you know that you've been awarded an outside scholarship, so a scholarship from your high school or community organization, you can notify us of that by clicking add or view resource. And then you can you can type in the name of it, and then the amounts, and then you'll select the term as well. So in most cases, that's going to be fall semester, but you can enter that here. And then click submit, and then that'll notify us that you're expecting to receive an additional scholarship from an outside source. In most cases, that doesn't affect your financial aid. It won't affect the scholarships and grants that you've been awarded from St. Thomas. It can potentially affect the breakdown between subsidized and unsubsidized within this 5,500. It could potentially affect work study eligibility. In most cases, it doesn't, but occasionally it can. We'll notify you of that if there is a change for that. But you can let us know any additional scholarships at that point. You can always come back and access this at any time. So after you've already accepted your loans and work study funds and click submit here, you can always, if you're coming back later, you can always view this again and then add resources later too. So that in a nutshell is the financial aid award page. I'm going to switch back here quickly to the PowerPoint. So that's how to find and read your financial aid award. The next thing that you're probably wondering, now that you know kind of the bulk financial aid that you're eligible for, what's left to pay? So to help you understand that, we've added what's called the college financing plan to Murphy Online. So I will actually switch back here again. So you'll log into Murphy Online just like before. If you're already logged into Murphy Online, that's even better. But over on the far right-hand side of the college finance of the toolbar here is the college financing plan. And it'll look a little bit something like this. For this account, we're in, again, that test environment that I mentioned, so things will look just slightly different. I'll go over what looks different. One of the things you might notice right away is we're on the 2021 school year. For you, it should list the 21-22 school year. But this is the college financing plan. So what this is a one-page breakdown of what St. Thomas's expected costs are for the school year, what your financial aid is, and then what your remaining amount to pay after financial aid is. So this is a really helpful tool for understanding what's left over after financial aid. But there's a lot of information on here because this is kind of a one-size-fits-all document. And this is something that's in the Department of Education's effort to make financial aid awards more uniform school to school. It's a really good way to compare costs school to school. So other schools might use a similar breakdown that we have listed here. So the very first thing I want to point out at the top of the college financing plan, though, is the expected family contribution. So this is the number that's generated by the FAFSA form when you complete it. So EFC for short. EFC is an index number that financial aid offices use to determine your financial aid. It is not the amount that you are going to pay for that year. So that is the big difference. It is, again, a starting point to allow us to determine things like federal and state grants, to determine subsidized loans, to determine work study funds, but it is not the amount that you are necessarily going to pay to attend college. It can be above that number and it could be below that number. Sometimes it's exactly dead on that number, but in most times it's going to be somewhere above or below that number. So again, this is not the amount that you pay to attend St. Thomas. It's just a starting point to help determine your financial aid. And this is a number you probably know already. It's on your student aid report that you got after you completed the FAFSA. So the next thing after EFC here to know is our total cost of attendance. Again, this lists 2021, but I have the numbers updated to this coming school year's info here. But again, this is going to be a page that's going to be unique to you, but it will list our costs for the coming school year here like this one does. So the first two lines are the most important to look at as far as determining your college costs. These are what we call the direct costs. So this is what's going to show up on the bill from St. Thomas. We do split it between the 2 semesters. This is the amount for the full year, but the bill is going to split it between fall and spring semesters. So the first one, tuition and fees. So this would be what's essentially the classroom part of your education. So it's going to be 12 to 18 credits per semester, plus all of the other additional fees outside of your tuition costs. So student activity, health fees, technology fees. So that this is the number that includes all of that. And again, this is going to be the same for most incoming students. The next line here, down here, is going to be housing and meals. So you can see over on this student here, it's over on off-campus. For your college financing plan, probably it's going to be listed over here and on campus. Not a big deal either way. It's going to be the same number. But that's going to be the average housing cost and then the meal plan cost for the school year. So again, these first 2 ones are very important. Not to say that the other ones aren't, but these are going to be the ones that are going to show up on the bill from St. Thomas. The next 3 here are what we call indirect costs. So these are ones that aren't necessarily going to show up on the bill from St. Thomas. More often than not, they will not show up on the bill from St. Thomas, but they're costs that you want to plan for. So these are here more for budgeting purposes, that you want to make sure you're budgeting for additional costs for books and supplies. That number varies quite a bit student to student, depending on what classes you're taking. But we encourage that students budget up to $1,000 for books and supplies. Transportation costs, again, we aren't going to charge you for your transportation, but there's a good chance that you're going to have to arrange that in some way. So if you're coming from farther away, your transportation costs might be higher. If you live in St. Paul, your transportation costs might be lower. But again, something that you want to budget for. And other education costs, this is primarily just personal expenses. So pizza, shampoo, things along those lines. So again, things that we won't necessarily bill you for directly, but you want to make sure you're planning for. So the estimated cost of attendance are all of these numbers added up. So again, both direct costs and indirect costs. But this is the before financial aid is applied, costs to attend St. Thomas for the school year. So this is an estimated cost of attendance. Your specific schedule can cause changes in this if you have additional lab fees, or if you take fewer than 12 credits or above 18 credits, for example. If your specific housing costs are higher, if you're in one of the, if you're in a single room, for example, or in one of the newer residence halls that have a higher cost, that can change this. So it's not a concrete number. One thing that I know oftentimes families have questions about is this number going to be the same for all 4 years? Based off of previous history, is likely not. Our Board of Trustees does meet every year to discuss potential cost increase. On average, costs do go up about 3 to 4%, but that can vary quite a bit. It can be below that and above that. But this is our what we're estimating the cost to be for next year as of now. The board has not officially set those costs yet, but we're normally pretty good at guessing that, we being the financial aid office. So this is what we're expecting the cost to be. We will finalize this and notify students when we do. So keep that in mind, that this is not a set in stone number and is not set in stone for all 4 years. This can change. Now, next on the college financing plan are the scholarships and grants again. So again, this is the gift aid section. So we list our scholarships here. I think the student has another smaller scholarship, $76 that you can see that's added in here. So scholarships do stay the same all 4 years. So the St. Thomas scholarship that a student receives, that will still stay the same all 4 years. Grants, on the other hand, which are listed here, these are need-based. So things like federal Pell Grants or state grants, those can go up or down each year depending on your FAFSA results. If you were awarded a Founders Grant, that amount would stay the same all 4 years, provided that you stay at a relatively similar financial need all 4 years. So as long as your family's finances don't change significantly, in most cases, you'll maintain eligibility for that Founders Grant. So But grants, again, can change year to year based off of FAFSA results, potentially. So that's why it's important to fill out the FAFSA each year, so you can maintain grant eligibility if you already received it, or it's possible in future years too that you might be eligible for a grant that you weren't freshman year. So it's really important to fill out the FAFSA each year for that reason as well. So this is probably the most important piece on the college financing plan is college costs you will be required to pay, or just a quicker way to describe that is net costs. So net costs are that estimated cost of attendance minus scholarships and grants gets you to your net cost for the year. So again, a key thing to keep in mind, the net costs here are going to include tuition, fees, and then all of these indirect costs that we talked about. So it's going to be higher than what you're going to pay directly to St. Thomas. It's going to factor in, about $3,500 of indirect costs, costs that you'll pay to potentially other people or businesses. So, but another key thing to know about the net cost is it doesn't include loans or work study. So that's a little math that you'll have to do if you decide to borrow loans and work study. So if you decide to borrow your federal direct loans, you'll subtract that from your net costs. And if you decide that you're going to work on campus and use all of those, all of your work study earnings towards your net costs, you'll subtract that as well too. So keep that in mind that this number is going to be a little bit higher than what your billable amount is going to be if you're going to be borrowing, or what's going to be your out-of-pocket amount, I should say, if you're going to be borrowing loans and then also working on campus too, and having those paid to your account. You'll see there's a number of blanks here. Again, like I mentioned, this is a one-size-fit-all form. But in the future, if you decide to borrow a private loan, that information will get plugged in here. And then if you decide to borrow a Parent Plus loan, once you have that approved and on the account, that gets plugged in here as well too. So this is a living document. I do suggest when you take a look at it, take a screenshot or print your screen, something along those lines, so you have just a copy of it. If you want something on paper to compare to other schools too, you should be able to do that just right out of Murphy Online here. So this is a really helpful tool. I definitely encourage you to look over it. Again, it can be a little confusing at first glance, but if you take it line by line, and really, again, this is the number one that you want to focus on, the net cost here, and while factoring in, additional loans if you choose to borrow those. This is, again, a really helpful tool to help make clear what your costs are going to be to attend St. Thomas. And again, what you see when you log into Murphy Online is going to be specific to your financial aid. This is just kind of a dummy account, but it'll have your actual information in here when you take a look at this. And then other info on here, just some additional terms or definitions of different terms used on here. So all good information that I'll let you read through on your own time. But again, this is just located under college financing on the far right-hand side of the toolbar when you log into Murphy Online. And then with that, we'll talk about some next steps. So these are the next steps that we're going to go over for those interested. So I'll get right into that just so we make sure to leave enough time to help answer questions. So one of the next things you need to do after you view your financial aid is decide if you're going to accept or decline those federal direct loans. So like I mentioned earlier, no rush to do that. I suggest by the beginning of August, but there's not a specific deadline to do it. It's technically, the deadline is about a week out from the end of that school year, so May 2022. So you have a long time to decide if you want to borrow these loans or not. But I suggest beginning of August, just so you can get everything done, have them set so they're ready to go once the school year starts. Some things to know about the federal direct loans: they're in the student's name only, so parents don't need to co-sign on this. It's only in the student's name. Repayment begins 6 months after graduation, so there's no payments due while the student's in school. It does have a low fixed interest rate. The current fixed interest rate is 2.75. I say current fixed interest rate because while it is fixed for the life of the loan, future school years can have different interest rates. So each year you borrow is technically a different loan, and it is the Department of Education sets that interest rate each year. So they set that in July. So I promised I would talk about this. The difference between subsidized and unsubsidized is pretty simple. Subsidized has no interest while the student's in school. Unsubsidized does accrue interest while the student's in school. So that's the difference between the two. So subsidized means that the government's paying the interest for you. Unsubsidized means the government's not paying the interest for you technically. So subsidized loans start accruing interest 6 months after graduation. So it's not a no interest forever loan. It's not a 0% interest loan. It just doesn't accrue interest while the student's in school. It's that interest is deferred until 6 months after graduation, or if the student leaves school for more than 6 months for any other reason. So as long as the student's enrolled at least half time, that interest stays deferred. And we normally suggest borrowing these options before exploring other private loans or federal parent loans, because these generally will have the lowest interest rates available, at least especially on as a fixed interest rate. They have generally better borrower benefits after school. So if a student runs into financial hardship, they have additional deferment options, income-based repayment options. So they generally will have the best repayment options available for students, where private lenders will have fewer options available. So we encourage that. Most financial aid offices in the country encourage that. And honestly, most private lenders encourage you to explore federal direct loans before adding on with other options. So again, that's going to be the next step that you want to do. There are some additional paperwork that you have to do after you accept the loans. If you choose to borrow them, the federal entrance counseling and master promissory note. We'll send info out on that if you choose to accept your loans. It takes about a half hour to do, and it's done all online, so it's pretty quick to do. But it's a good reason to make sure you make that decision earlier, so you have time to get that done. So another thing you might be wondering is, for that remaining amount, what's left to pay, or how do I pay what's left to pay? So I like to look at this as past, present, and future. So past would be money that you've saved that you can help put towards costs at the beginning of a semester. So that's one way to pay, is to pay the remaining costs at the beginning of each semester. Students will do this through a number of ways. That could be through summer work. That could be through family savings over many years. It could be through a 529 plan. So a 529 is a tax beneficial savings account that you might have started to help students pay for college costs. Grandparents might have one set up in students' names. So if you've done this, that's a great way to pay for college costs. We can't tell you, we're not financial advisors, so we can't tell you whether you should spread that out over 4 years or use it all at once. There's different benefits for different people. But that is a good way, if you have been saving, to help pay for college costs up front. Another way to help pay for college would be using present earnings or current earnings. So that could be campus employment, like we talked about. That can be off-campus work as well. There's nothing that says that you have to work on campus here. If you want to work off-campus, that's one of the benefits of being in a major metro areas. There's a lot of potential employment surrounding campus. And then there's also payment plans available. So if you're going to be paying as you go, there is a monthly payment plan available. So when you receive the billing statement, you'll see a total amount due for the semester and then a minimum payment amount. That minimum payment amount is the payment plan, so you're automatically enrolled. There's no other payment paperwork that you need to do for it. You just make that minimum payment each month. So that helps you if you want to split that cost over the 4 months of the semester. That can make it a lot more manageable for families. There is a 1.1% finance charge month to month if you choose to do that. So that's a consideration, but that is available to help pay. And then future, so we talked about this a little bit when we talked about loans, but future would be paying for college with future earnings. So that would mean borrowing now to repay later. So we talked about federal direct loans. The federal government also has a Parent Plus loan that's available for families for parents to borrow to help pay for college costs. This does state in the parent's name if you choose to do that. And there's also private student loan options available. These, in most cases, will require a cosigner. That checklist that I showed you earlier, the stthomas.edu/awarded, That is has more info on these additional loan options for you. So I definitely encourage you to read over that. And if you have questions about that, feel free to ask today, and then also reach out to financial aid counselor and we can help you go through those options. Now, a big thing that's even more important nowadays is what happens if your family's financial situation has changed. The FAFSA is based off of 2019 tax information. 2019 was a long time ago now, it feels like. So if things have changed since 2019 for your family, what you're going to want to do is reach out to your financial aid counselor to talk about the special circumstance process. So you've likely, if you're viewing this today, you've likely already done the FAFSA. And we have a special circumstance application that you can complete, that we can collect additional documentation, and we can actually go into your FAFSA and update that to reflect your more current financial situation. So another plug for that checklist that I mentioned, we also have these applications right there. So if you want to get a jump start on the process, you can download the application right online from that checklist under the special circumstance section. So some things that we can consider would be reduction in income or change in income or unemployment for a parent, large out-of-pocket medical expenses, so expenses not covered by insurance, private education expenses for younger siblings, so K-12, and then changes in the household size as well. So when we make an adjustment to a student's FAFSA, we then determine to see if they qualify for any additional grants and additional federal, state grants, St. Thomas-based, need-based financial aid as well. So we'll look at that on a case-by-case basis for students. So, but we don't know that unless you reach out to us. So I definitely encourage you to do that if this is your situation, because we want to help you with this. And with that, I will hand it over to Tom Asp from the admission office to talk about the remaining next steps.
Yeah, and so for moving forward, you're going to be working a lot more with financial aid. Previously, it's been maybe admissions that's been doing more of the talking with you and your family and your student, but now you'll notice financial aid has a lot of info now that you actually have dollar amounts. There's definitely a conversation to be had there. I'm just going to talk about a few extra things that you might have been hearing about. Scholarship opportunities, a lot of them, Neil mentioned the science, math, and engineering one has passed. A lot of the deadlines and stuff passed, but there is a couple out there still. So the Board of Trustees scholarship, if you log into your application and click on scholarship opportunities, it's going to be one of the options on the right side of your admissions portal. That requires, I believe, a 3.75 GPA from high school, and then that could be an extra $1,000 to $3,000 a year. And so there's a few out there. I know there's that one. There's an engineering one out there. The Board of Governors is what it's called, and then I believe there's another entrepreneurship one still there as well. So it's not as many as there were in the fall. A lot of those are being decided now, and students are getting invited to test for various scholarships. But there's a few. I would say at this point, though, I would pivot my energy towards your school's counseling office, because more often than not, they have some sort of file bin with local private community scholarships. And just like Neil mentioned, because we do stack those scholarships on top of your existing financial aid package, you can apply for those. And if you get those, we won't decrease what our offer is. And so I think that that's probably the least utilized form of financial aid. A lot of these scholarship organizations are really looking for students to apply. But we get it. It's like hard to just squeeze in a few scholarship applications in what's already a very, very busy and stressful life for high school seniors. But I'd say that if you applied to even one private local community scholarship a month, I think you'd probably be ahead of like the vast majority of your peers. You'd be surprised how in need a lot of these organizations are for applicants. And so please talk to your school counseling office and see if there's scholarships for folks from your community that have won, that have gone on to college. We do encourage, there's a few sites like Dollars for Scholars where St. Thomas might match some of those funds. And if you are a St. Thomas student, you'll get like a monthly newsletter of, it's sort of like it aggregates a lot of outside scholarships that St. Thomas students have won in the past. And so you can kind of scroll through the various offerings for the month and sort of see, okay, it's February 2023. Let's see what the scholarship offerings are. And a lot of them might be for people from different parts of the country, different backgrounds, different majors, but every now and then you might find one that fits you perfectly, and then you can apply for it. So moral of the story is that I think the mindset for a lot of students is that scholarship hunting is sort of this thing that you only do in high school, and then once you start college, you're done. But I think it's a good mindset to have, to continuously look for funds. I know that St. Thomas does have some cool ones for current students, where like you'll see signs around campus for, maybe it's like a business competition where students can win funds. And so even as a current student, keep your eyes out for these scholarships, because like Neil said, you can stack it on top of your existing aid. Campus employment, Neil, you crushed it on that. You went very in depth. So I don't necessarily have a ton of extra info in terms of like how it works. You can work whether or not you qualify for work study. The one thing I do want to highlight is that you can earn more or less depending on how many hours you work. So if you're offered 4,000, you still have to earn that by working, however many hours to accumulate that much money. And so 12.50 an hour is kind of the minimum starting for fall 2021. And I think there's different tiers depending on jobs. Maybe if it's a more skilled position like a lifeguard or something, there might be different tiers of pay that you can get, but that is sort of where it starts. And so stthomas.edu/jobs. And I do say that it's an awesome thing to do, especially if it's a job that allows you to continue working in the summer, where students typically aren't taking classes. Our curriculum's built where if you just have one major, you shouldn't need to take summer classes, and so that can be a chance for you to work if you want. I'd say we have student workers in the admissions and financial aid office, and oftentimes they're in the summer when they don't have classes, they're working pretty close to as much as we are, and so that can really help put a dent in their costs. And then if you exceed the cost of, or if you exceed what you were awarded in work study, I don't think the students notice it. The money might be coming from a different place, but the student will continuously get a paycheck. Okay, so I would say that the last point is something I threw in there as sort of a student experience thing, in that you should work on campus. I think that it's just an awesome chance to meet people and build that community. St. Thomas tends to retain students really well from freshman to sophomore year, meaning students who finished freshman year are very likely to come back as sophomores, which is great. But students who work on campus, I think it's like 98%. We learned that from our like data and research folks on campus. So virtually every student who has jobs on campus comes back. And so part of that could be earning that paycheck. And I do think part of it though comes from just building a community of other St. Thomas students. So whether or not you qualify for work study, I would say that it's an awesome idea to get a job on campus. Some students have a few. Some students work off campus. Off campus, they might not be as accommodating with your schedule as on-campus jobs, whereas an on-campus job knows that you're a student first, and so they'll prioritize that. And if you have a final exam, they're very accommodating with those things. Whereas, if you work off campus, it really just depends on your supervisor and who you work for. So, if you go to the next one. All right, in terms of your steps, the confirmation process and submitting deposits, that is one of the things that admissions can help with. There's really two philosophies to depositing, because the word confirm and deposit sound very sort of like final and scary, but really some students will deposit first and then choose the college that they want to go to, and some students will internally mentally choose the college they want to go to and then deposit. But St. Thomas, either way, the deposits are fully refundable until May 1st. And so some students will say St. Thomas is in my top 2-3 options right now. I'm just going to put down a deposit because it secures me a spot at the school. It secures me a spot in the residence halls. And then I'll decide between those schools which one I want to go to. You definitely want to make your mind up before May 1st, because after May 1st, deposits are no longer refundable, and that's when you'll see a lot of universities starting wait lists and those types of things. So it's up to you. You can either deposit and then choose the college, or choose the college and deposit. The deposits are one of the things that the Department of Residence Life uses when placing students into the halls. It's not the only thing that they use, but that's why you'll see some students going out there in December and January putting down a deposit if there's a particular residence hall that really caught their eye. The next steps, though, don't come out until March. So a lot of people deposit in December and say, when am I going to hear about from housing? We give students a little bit of a time to actually think about where they want to go to college. But in March, we will be contacting students, asking students for preferences in terms of halls. So when you deposit, you don't have to rank your halls from most desired to least desired. We'll wait until March when you maybe have more clarity where you want to attend college. But yeah, details come out in March. So if you've already deposited, just kind of sit tight. You can kind of go on our Facebook page that we've probably advertised to you and try to message some students and find some roommates, or in March you can fill out a survey to eventually get placed with a random roommate. Lastly, visit opportunities. Starting February 1, you'll see that St. Thomas is sort of bringing back some student-led campus tours and in-person appointments. We use a lot of large spaces where we can safely distance indoors, and then we have enough tour guides, thankfully, to be able to do one-on-one campus tours across campus. So starting February 1, you'll see that as an option. If you go to stthomas.edu/visit, there will be a calendar. If you select that you're a high school senior, you'll see all the different offerings, and it can be anything from those student-led campus tours to in-person appointments with admissions counselors to you could do self-guided campus tours if you want to just download. There's like an app you can download and come to campus. And then of course, we have many virtual offerings. Lastly, I think I would just say that you can always ask to meet with specific people. If there's a really specific thing about your college search that is going to determine where you're going to go, let us know, because you'll see that there's kind of the classic offerings on the visit page. When you're designing your campus visit, it'll be things like, do you want to do a tour? Do you want to meet with an admissions counselor? It might have an option of, do you want to do a virtual financial aid appointment? But I would say that if you want to talk to a chemistry professor or a social work professor or an engineering professor, let us know, because a lot of the times we're more than willing to accommodate that and get a chance for you to do a virtual appointment with them. If you're on campus, we have a little room you can walk in and the professors on a computer. Otherwise, we can set up something outside of that on campus appointment for you. So I think that visiting's key as you get into these final few months before May, in sort of narrowing down your final options. Maybe the last time you were on campus was, a year ago, and you just want to refresh your memory, maybe see the new residence hall. Please come to campus and go to stthomas.edu/visit. I know that there are financial aid Tommy Talks where you can meet specifically with a financial aid counselor to get into the nitty-gritty with Neil in terms of cost, finances, and if St. Thomas is financially feasible.
Great. Well, thanks, Tom. So as far as who to contact with more questions, you can contact the financial aid office in general at financialaid@stthomas.edu. And then also we'll leave this up here for question for the phone number. And then also Tom talked about how to arrange a personal appointment.